All right. I'm here to call.
It's hard to hear. Is there a way to? I can't hear you guys. Sorry.
You haven't said anything yet, Dave.
No. You want me to? I can speak a little bit louder.
That's better. Yeah, thank you.
So I call this meeting to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And then can we do the roll call?
Yes. Director Brown,
Here.
Director Halbert,
Present.
Chair Hernandez,
Present.
Director Jersey,
Present.
Director King is absent, Director Testa,
Present.
and then Vice Chair Branning.
Here.
We have a forum.
Thank you. Next, I will open the meeting up to the public. Members of the audience can address the board of directors on any matter within the general subject matter jurisdiction. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment?
So we did not receive anything via email and there are no attendees in this meeting right now. We do have public comment, but it's not until agenda item 7, I believe.
Sounds good. All right, then I will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Do you have any comments or questions on the
If I
consent?
could modify, I would like to pull agenda item E from the consent agenda for presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So pulling agenda item E, are there any questions or comments on the remainder of the consent? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the consent?
We do not have anybody here in the audience. I didn't receive anything by email or there's no attendees either. So no.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion on consent items A through D, F, and G.
I will move the consent calendar minus item.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
We have to do
Oh,
You have to do roll call vote.
roll call.
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Halbert,
Aye.
Chair Hernandez,
Aye.
Director Josie, Director Kick is absent, Director Testa,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Branning.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, on consent agenda item E, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Brown.
Yes, I pulled consent agenda item E because the contract award was so significant in its cost. It's a 2-year award for $878,000. And I know in the past we'd used Tony as an FTE, so it may have been one of his positions. But doing a little bit of math, if I take 878 and I divide it by, you name it, 2 years is 439,000 a year. I realize it's up to. And then I could even divide that again, giving me 219,000 for 4 people for 1 year, I would assume, or even 8 people, depending on salary. So I guess the reason I'm pushing back is it's extremely expensive. To the best of my knowledge, we've done a lot of this work in-house, some of it out. But I wondered if we wouldn't be best served by at least having a marketing manager in-house and reducing some of that cost that's going out. I have never seen a bill as large as $878,000 for marketing before.
Through the chair, if I might reply or respond. The first item is that this is for a 3-year contract. So it is a 2-year base with 1 option year for a total not to exceed 878. And the 878 is our projection of what we will spend in professional services related to marketing, advertising, and creative campaigns over the next 3 years. We have budgeted for this in past years. Tony did have, I think it was about 150 to 200,000 a year in this particular line item. We have upped that. We just received new cost information as a part of this RFP. And so this is a task order contract. Any task that would exceed $100,000 would come back to the board for approval. And this would be bound by our annual budget. So this is a not to exceed amount that we believe based on past years of spending and based on the costs that we are seeing in the proposals, we believe that this is the maximum amount we would spend for.
If I could, let's drill it down. What exactly are you paying for? So are you paying for internet service? Are you paying for, at one time we had door-to-door service to increase ridership along the Route 10 or routes that would support BART? Just this, when I read the staff report, it didn't drill it down to me exactly what your goal is and why it's such it's still expensive. Why you need quite so much money for marketing and why you're not doing all of it in-house or some of it in-house, because marketing is gonna last more than 3 years.
Yeah. I'm gonna invite David Mark to come to the podium and to speak more about this. He's our Director of Customer Experience, and he can speak to some of the tasks that we would be running through this contract.
I can speak to some of the tasks that were in the RFP as we're listed here. So before I get to that, let me take a step back. So it's based on 3 years. The second piece is we did all of our due diligence. We did an ICE to comparative agencies in the Bay Area that had recently done RFPs for creative services, and the rates that we were provided were well within scope of what had been presented to others. And we also did do full interviews with all 6 agencies, and the prices were reasonable for the 2 outside resources and outside of our agency, one from Long Transit Services and one from County Connection. So it was reviewed by subject matter experts. As far as the scope, certainly planning and strategy services mean our marketing plan each year. Our advertising is the advertising negotiation media buying portion. As a comparison to previous year's purchases, the website piece is actually inclusive now, and it was additive before. So that's also a significant chunk of that increase that we released. Heading to the top end, it's at least $25,000 a year in website management services plus hosting that are now inclusive. That would have been a separate line item previously. And I lastly say that there has been an increase in the cost and inflation since we went over this contract last, which would have been around 2016, 2017. Off the top of my head, I would say a blended rate was around 125 to 150 previously for all of the SME services with scope. It is now easily in the 150 to 200 range on average with any agency. So
If I take your 878 and I divide it by 3, I come up with 292,000, assuming I can pencil it correctly. 292,000 versus 125 and 150 in past, plus the website, which I hope it's gonna be very secure because we don't need any of that stuff. I just don't need to go backwards in our time, but I'm still not clear, and trust me, I have a strong marketing background. But I still am not clear what creative services are, what strategy services are, and I'm still not sure what optional research services are. These are such big terms. Can you drill it down a little bit just so that I can understand it? Because this is a lot of money.
sure, the marketing plan will have a minimum of 3 campaigns per year. Some are already known, some are things like our track transit, some are what are called drip campaigns. Those would be things to increase ridership that would be planned throughout the year. There's also creative itself, which is you have a graphic artist, and that's at 1 hour of time. But you have a creative strategist who is looking into our demographics and helping us decide how to theme these campaigns. And that's actually, in this case, the principal of the organization, who is expensive proposition, but that's how we get the best work. We also did bring this to an agency that's now in the Bay Area, whereas before the agency was Los Angeles.
thing that is a benefit to you to be in the Bay Area, or just so happens to be?
No, it's definitely a benefit to us. This agency has extensive work specifically within our demographics and with our specific East Bay residents. They have run campaigns for other transit and government infrastructure in the area. I'll call out Oakland Airport, Port of Oakland. Port of Oakland does a lot of its advertising in the East Bay, apply the East Bay way, if you will. So they know our residents and our media channels now. It's very specific. That was a strong.
If I could mark on, the TikTok ad that drove the Go Tri Valley ridership was a result of our previous advertising or marketing contractor. So we do some things in-house. We're actually, David's trying to hire for a marketing specialist, because to your point, some graphic design work, some marketing work can be done in-house. But there are some things that we just think are better done by the professionals. And I think that particular campaign was very successful, maybe not in the ways that we wanted, but.
Go Tri Valley, we're almost paying people to ride, so, yeah, okay, all right, and if everybody else feels comfortable with it.
I'd like to ask a couple follow-up questions
Please.
if I might. Can you explain what you meant by, the website hosting is now inclusive of this contract?
Sure. Previously, we had separate agreements with separate task orders for creative services, basically creating an ad and making a recommendation on buying that ad and hosting our website, maintaining our website, and any higher level administrative content changes that were beyond our in-house capacity. And so our previous marketing contract task order would have been alone, so it wouldn't have included that, that would have been separate. Now they're together.
Okay.
And I believe it was, 2,500 a month went towards that website maintenance.
Okay, we don't do our own website maintenance in-house, our creative marketing team does that, does our routine website maintenance. Now,
Website maintenance from a very technical perspective, from how to host WordPress, which is our content management system, and keeping it running on the server, keeping it connected to the internet.
okay,
Certainly things like text changes, image changes, or content changes, we do in-house.
okay. Okay, and then my second question is, in this not to exceed amount, that includes not just the creative work, the copy work and all that, but the printing and the mailing, if we were gonna do print cards, the things that are going to go on the bus, the actual physical project, not just the creative content.
It does not include production.
No, that's under different line item.
So at the Finance and Administration Committee, when we forwarded this on, I shared some, wanted more. I agreed the contract seems high, so I guess I'd like to send the message that that is something that I would hope we could find ways to reduce it a bit. But I asked for examples of what the work and media, and so it would have been nice to have that for today, since I brought up that was kind of lacking last time. But I did get a great email with examples. Now, there was nothing LAVTA specific in the examples. It was generic media flyers and such from other jobs that had been done. But yeah, for the contract like this, and I would hope that as we move forward and these materials are created, they're made available so that we can in fact get a sense of what that went toward. But thanks for the follow-up and sending me that email.
Any additional questions or comments?
I wonder if this board would consider a 1 year with a chance for extension, because just almost 300,000 for 1 year. I'd like to know what they're gonna really do. So yes, we had one TikTok program that was very successful. Although it's a well-kept secret, and once the word was out, it did run. But I'm just uncomfortable. I will tell you at this point, I haven't heard from everybody. I could support $300,000 without having somebody inside that's managing this rather than just have this outside, and I know that's part of your job. But you have a lot of other jobs too, so I just can't support it.
Would it be possible to do a 1 year with a 2 year extension?
I'm gonna look to, legal here for that, because the RFP was posted as 2 year with 1 year base, and I presume the pricing that the vendors put forth is to reflect 2 years worth of work, but.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to the proposer to get confirmation that they'd be willing to do it. But you could certainly give that direction to your executive director.
So they could come back at the next meeting as just $900,000. That's a lot of FTEs. I'm just saying. And we have technical people in the area that can do website management. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I've never spent that much money on our city for marketing, anything close to that. So anyway, I'll be quiet.
So, I mean, I'm comfortable, I think it makes sense for what we're getting, this seems like about the going rate. I am comfortable, with Mayor Brown's suggestion. So maybe ask for the 1 year. I would really defer to the will of the board if that was something we wanted to bring this back next month. Ask that question and see where it goes. Personally, I'd be comfortable going with what's in the consent calendar. I think when you think about, adding FTEs, do you have an estimate of roughly what is one FTE for LAVTA run? I don't know.
Depending on position, benefits, fully loaded benefits, I'd say this position would probably, well, somebody to do this type of thing would probably be about 125 to 50.
For the
With
salary?
benefits, for salary and benefits.
Wow. So about 2 people, 2 FTEs roughly in there. I'm not. I am curious to know with I am curious with the question, with 2 FTEs, manage the amount of work that we're looking at, is this something that, would be more efficient that way or not?
Sorry, I need to add something in.
Yeah.
That price is just for 1 year. It does not include the OPEB amounts
Mhm.
and the retirement ongoing. So that's just literally for 1 year. There are additional costs.
And that wouldn't be at the senior level of the
No.
people that we're talking about
Yeah.
in this contract.
I also don't think you get the scope of expertise, because right now that whatever their hourly rate is gonna be applied to a plethora of people, bringing in what's needed at that time. If we went to an FTE, you would have, confined resources.
So that would be kind of the follow, would 2 FTEs be able to do the scope of work? If we moved it to 2 FTEs, I know it's not an exact, but say we had 2 FTEs, would they be able to do the scope of work that we're asking for in this contract? Do you believe they would?
I believe that the agency will have a wide range of SMEs for a lot of different tasks. We would need, we would need web, we would need designers, we would need strategists, we would need media buying. And it just takes different personalities, different skill sets to execute those tasks.
But we always had this with Tony before, right, other than a small contract. So I'm just options. I'm not recommending 2 FTEs for certain, clearly. But I'm just saying, I would like to look at the other options, just to do a mix and a blend, but.
Supervisor Hubbard?
Yeah, so I know as I hear Director Brown express concern over the sheer magnitude of the cost. And so likening that to a similar cost of FTEs doesn't alleviate that. But the question that, and we just talked about it briefly here, the skill set, often when you go out to an agency like this, it's because they have a specific skill. They have a team of people that they can call upon for the different needs, like designing, like strategy, like procuring the places to market. The question is, do we do this in-house or do we do it out-house? And I think I'm hearing that out-house, because they have the skill and the infrastructure of a large team to call upon. So I'm not opposed to having it done out of our house. But indeed, it's a lot of money. And so I guess the question is, the first question is, are we willing to spend this much money on this task? And so then if I could ask, and I think I heard it, but I'm not sure. Christie, what have we spent in the past on this function? And if we're increasing it, is that meant to be an ongoing increase, or is it something that we're going to do like a one-time push and then not do for a while? In which case, again, that reinforces the decision to do this on a contracted basis so that you don't bring on employees. Just a little more explanation. And if you said it already and I didn't get it, I apologize.
No worries, sir. In the past, I believe for this line item, we spent about 170.
And I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Christie.
Oh, we spent about.
I don't know what it is. Our microphone isn't that good there.
We spent about 170,000 just on the creative marketing strategy services, and then
Christie, I'm sorry,
I
I can't hear you.
Oh,
Is there a microphone there somewhere?
can everyone else hear me? Melissa, can you hear me?
You know what, let me
Okay.
turn
It's yelling at everybody here.
air conditioning thing off.
I can
in
hear
my
you.
office 'cause it's.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn his volume.
We have a creative for that block.
We did, and that was different. Yeah.
Like I could hear,
Yeah.
Evan, but
Okay.
somehow I can't.
All right, well, I will yell very loud. We typically, for the last several years, spent about 170,000 on the creative and media strategy, and then another 25,000 on the website. So in total, approximately 200,000. And I will just say, the budget wasn't changed for many years. What was requested every year was the same amount. So we did the same campaigns every year. And so we have a new system. This is post-pandemic. We recognize costs have changed. We have new staff. We have new initiatives. And so we felt comfortable increasing the budget for that particular line item. And you'll see that in your FY25 budget. I just want to remind the board, this is a not to exceed amount. We can adjust next year's budget downward if we see that we're not spending the money or that ROI is not there. And any task order that exceeds 100,000, I will bring back to you for your approval. So this is a ceiling. This is our best guess on what we think we will do over the next 3 years. We didn't inflate it each year too significantly. But if I'm absolutely open to the direction today.
So,
Can I, go ahead.
unless there's novel ideas that people want to put out, I think right now I would ask possibly for a motion on either to approve this or to table it for next month. I think there's been a good amount of feedback. So if someone has something novel to add?
I have a question.
I had a question as well,
Okay.
but go ahead. It might be the same question.
So you said, we've done the same campaigns and it's cost the same. Actually, I would think that there would be a year of investment where the campaign was developed and then it would be far less as you recycle similar formatting and such, but it's the same every year?
Well, we do the Try Transit to Schools campaign. So it's the same, it's not new. And sometimes we recycle material and just update. Sometimes we do more creative. I think for the last few years, we've just sort of regurgitated the old material. We spend quite a bit of money on our schedules. The big cost this year for our current contractor was updating all of our timetables. So there's a lot of work that gets done in the graphic design world. So maybe I'm not answering your question.
You know, it definitely, I mean, we've all done campaigns, we've all done a lot of material, it's certainly if it's recycling similar, it shouldn't continue to be the same cost. So
Yeah.
I would ask for a little bit of oversight in seeing what we can do to make it more efficient.
Okay.
My question is, and I think I heard you say this, I just want to be clear. This amount that is on the consent calendar here is already programmed into the budget we're gonna get to in a few minutes when we stop talking about this, correct?
Not the 878.
No, but the
1
for the
year,
single
yes,
year of it
correct.
is programmed in.
Yes.
And because it is a not to exceed amount, we may not get to that amount,
Correct.
but we budgeted for the first year of it.
Correct.
And because it's a not to exceed amount, even if we approve for 2 years with the option to extend, doesn't mean we have to spend the whole thing. Great, then and I appreciate that those of us that are asking the most questions are not on the finance committee that recommended this project to us. I'm comfortable with their recommendation, and so, with your leave, I'm happy to make the motion that we approve the staff recommendation for this item.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Hernandez will second. I was absent at our last meeting, but Christy and I did speak about this.
Okay, we have
I'm
a,
gonna do one last comment that before you take your vote.
okay,
That in the past, we did have a grant for marketing. And that helped get some of these costs covered. So literally, we got a grant and people walked neighborhoods to build up ridership. Now, that may not be the best choice, and it did work though, but grants sometimes pay for these expenses. So maybe over the next few years, we might be able to find a grant. I mean, I'm always optimistic about grants. Okay, that's my comment. Thank you.
sounds good. Forgot to open it up. Were there any public comment on the item?
There's no attendees in the meeting. I didn't receive anything, the email, and there's nobody here.
Perfect. Then let's call for a roll call.
Okay, Director Brown,
I support marketing, but I can't support this, so no.
Director Halbert,
Aye.
Chair Hernandez,
Aye.
Director Josie,
Aye.
Director Kate is absent, Director Testa,
Aye.
Vice Chair Brandon.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. So I've entered the consent calendar and we're moving on to item 5, LAVTA's operating capital budget for fiscal year 2025. We've got a presentation.
We do, should have reversed these, yeah. And we have a PowerPoint for you here.
So good afternoon. I'm here today to present to you an overview of LAVTA's operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2025. We're going to do a quick process overview, and then we'll do an overview of the operating budget and then the capital budget separately. We did a budget kickoff in February, as we do every year. LAVTA uses a zero-based budget. So we ask that everybody explain what they want and what they want it for. So they can't just say, I want $300,000 because you gave me $300,000 last year. They have to break it down and explain what it's for. We get input from all of the departments. The department heads actually go out to each of their staff members and get input from them. So literally everybody at LAVTA gets involved in the budget process in some form or another. This year, on the capital side, you will see that we use a new budgeting software that is, that half a ream of paper in your packet. Next year, we'll be using that same software for operating. We thought we would do a kickoff with capital, get the people who do capital budgeting used to it, and then roll it out to everybody next year. And it was actually surprisingly easier to use than suspected, so we're very excited to roll it out for operating. This year's total operating budget is $25,035,456. That's an increase of only 1.9% from fiscal year's 24 budgeted numbers. Our largest budgeted line items are, of course, purchase transportation, both fixed route and paratransit, and our Go Tri-Valley contracts, which make up almost 60% of our entire budget. I will share that the Go Tri-Valley budget decreased significantly this year. Our insurance went up 0%. That's over the budgeted amount. Over our actual, it'll actually be closer to 30. Last year when we did the budget, we didn't have the actual insurance numbers, so we estimated based off, industry conditions, what we know. But this year we have actual numbers. That was literally the last thing we put in the budget. We actually had it. Our utilities are going up 41%. I will share that PG&E alone is over $100,000 more for this next year, and that's based on actuals for this year. So not really a surprise. Fuel is going down. Fuel is going down because we decreased the amount of miles and hours that we budgeted. We're kind of right-sizing the budget this year. So fuel went down. The amount per gallon did not. That would have been nice, but not realistic. Salaries and benefits went up 15%. A large portion of that is on the benefit side. Benefits go up every year, but we also, a few years ago, the board approved paying down our unaccrued liability amount. To do that all in 1 year would have blown our budget. I mean, it was just, so we paid some last year and we're increasing it a little bit this year. So that's part of that increase as well. The hope is that we can have it paid down and at the 83, I think it's 83 or 83.5% funded level that the board wants. Also in salary and benefits, we are proposing a new FTE, a capital planning and grants manager. That will be coming back to the board. That will be, I believe, part of the strategic plan. So that will probably, although we budgeted for a full year, will probably not be a full year. Our professional services this year, we budgeted for the elimination of SAB related budget items. That was a big help on the budget. We have an increase in marketing, advertising, and digital communications. We have our strategic plan, we're very excited about. Our advocacy / lobbying services, which you've all heard about recently. Mobility management, which is for paratransit. We are hoping to do a fleet and facility audit where we would bring an outside entity in to come and check the conditions of our fleet, which we believe to be in good condition, but it's good to have people who actually know about that rather than Christy and I walking around buses and trying to figure out how we're doing. So, and then the facility as well to see if there's anything that's due to happen that we don't know about. We budgeted for additional legal fees for next year. We are going out for an operations and maintenance RFP. And as you probably saw in the capital budget, there's 30 capital projects budgeted for this year. Every one of them will have at least one procurement. So those and the O&M RFP, all of those go through legal. So that's going to be an additional cost. Our planning department has added a remix scheduling and planning software to help increase the efficiency. Customer experience is added a swiftly real-time passenger information module, and I'm sure that will be coming back to you for details on that as well. Our IT department is increasing our cybersecurity for obvious reasons. We're going to a cloud-based migration, and they are outsourcing some of our IT functions to SDI. On the revenue side, we have our best advertising contract. We have our regional Measure 3 funds. These are very exciting. They were voted on by the voters of the Bay Area many years ago, and then immediately went to a lawsuit. So the lawsuit is now settled. We are now getting funds. And the formula of how those funds will be distributed has not been determined, but that did bump up our revenue side quite a bit. Our interest earned, I tend to budget this conservatively. However, our interest earned has been coming in significantly higher than what I've been budgeting, so I increased that as well to match what we're actually getting. Our Atlantis lease for parking, Google employees parking, that increased this year, and our STA. FTA funds, you'll notice, are way down. That's because we had some one-time FTA funds last year. However, with the increase in the other revenues, we were able to balance our operating budget without taking any money from our reserves. So, which I was not feeling good when I had to take that 4.3 million out of the FTA line. And yet, when all the numbers are there, it was very pleasingly surprising. On the capital side, and I'm sure you all read all 60, 70 pages, so we've asked questions as we get to the project. We have an increase of 38 million over last year's capital budget. That is primarily attributed to our Atlantis facilities in the budget. We probably won't actually build the entire 80-something million facility next year, but putting it in the budget, having it approved helps us apply for grants. So it's in there. We did not have any bus purchases in 24, but we do in 25. Those always bump up the budget. We have our Atlantis hydrogen fueling station we plan to get done this year. We have mobility hubs, the rapid bus stop improvements. You all know about the Rattan Maintenance Bay hydrogen retrofit. You've heard about that quite a bit. We have some improvements at our transit center. And then we are doing a project to upgrade our transit signal priority so that it will be cloud-based.
This is the year of the shuffle. That's what I'm calling it, the year of the shuffle.
We do have a new capital projects manager. who's already getting everything ready to go so that we can jump in once the fiscal year starts. And that is it for my presentation. Any questions?
All right, really is the year of capital projects. Just do public comment first, so.
I'll go ahead and share. Still no attendees in the meeting. I didn't receive anything, via email.
Perfect, then I'll open it up to the board. Do we have any questions, comments? What?
I had a question on the interest. With this being the year of the capital projects and a lot of the money coming out of the big capital funds, is this the right time to increase our projected interest, given that we don't know what rates will do, and we know that we will be pulling money out of our largest pot of money? Is this the right year to right size that interest projection?
So that's a great question. We actually hold a lot of our reserve funds here. We're not supposed to, we return some every so often. However, we get reimbursed on these capital projects pretty quickly afterwards. So there may be a little lag, but we're talking like a few weeks of when the money goes out and when the money comes in. And although I increased it, I was still conservative under what we're actually getting. On the revenue side, we always budget very conservatively. And then on the expense side, we add a little here and there just for those things that, happen.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Okay, I just had a couple of quick comments. So I like to do formatting. I was a baby last time I looked at this, so I don't fully remember everything.
So different now.
It was Excel last time we looked at it.
It's been a long time, and I think I was on council for like a few months at that point. So, one of the things I really liked is that you did have it broken down. I did like the section that had the goals for each department. I thought that was really useful for then taking those goals, looking at the budget and trying to figure out, are we meeting our goals? How does this fit in? So I thought that was done very, very well. And then because we're talking budget, I always want to reduce barriers. I will point out that basically fares, as far as I can tell, pay for fuel. And that's about the percentage of the budget that matches up. So when we're talking about fares and fare adjustments, I just.
Let me just interject, that some of our funding sources we could not receive if we didn't meet a fare box ratio level. So if we eliminated fares, it would eliminate more than just that fare box.
I understand. Yeah.
I get it dollar wise, it is not a huge chunk of the budget.
It's a small part of our budget, so. Okay, seeing no comments or questions
Can I
then?
just make a comment? I don't mind. You always do such a great job. Thank you. Obviously, a great experience in this position because you've done it for many years, but just explaining something that I find generally complex, but you do a great job of putting it together, so thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation of the budget.
We have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sure. Director Brown?
Yes.
Director Hubbard?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Aye.
Director Josie? Aye. Director Kick is absent. Director Testa?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Branning?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to item 6, the Regional Transportation Revenue Measure SB 1031, board position.
Thank you, Chair. Today before you is an action item related to taking an opposed unless amended position on Senate Bill 1031. For the last several months, I have included updates on SB 1031 as a part of my executive director's report during the board meetings. Today, I am joined by LAVTA state lobbyists from Townsend. I want to introduce Andres Ramirez and Eric Bronson, who will be helping us to guide the conversation about SB 1031 and the process. LAVTA, in addition to working with our state lobbyists, we are also working with our East Bay coalition lobbyists on this issue. My East Bay colleagues, my East Bay general manager colleagues are still assessing the issue related to their respective agencies and its impact on their situations. But nonetheless, LAVTA staff felt that this issue was important enough to bring to the board to have a dialogue and to have a conversation. And again, today we will be supported by the Townsend team to answer any questions. Again, this is an action item before you. The recommendation from your Finance and Administration Committee is to take an opposed unless amended position. At their committee meeting 2 weeks ago, we presented information about the bill, including very recent amendments, I think, that were published just a few days before the committee hearing. We discussed what was in the amended bill and how that compared to your approved legislative program. And I'll just point out that your approved legislative program for 2024 is attached to your staff report. In addition, in your staff report, it talks about how SB 1031 does not align neatly with your legislative program. In looking at how transit agencies are responding to this bill, of those who have taken a formal position, the majority have taken an oppose unless amended position. Based on my knowledge and my research, only one agency has taken a full support position for this bill. And in general, labor groups are coming out in opposition. So before we turn it over for discussion, I wanted to give Eric and Andres an opportunity to talk about the timing and maybe the path of this bill and what the next step is. So with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Christy, and good afternoon, board members. Good to see so many familiar faces, but in a slightly different setting. My colleague and Eric and I wanted to provide a little bit more context on the bill, some of the perhaps pros and cons of taking an oppose unless amended position, as has been, staff's recommendation, and then also talk about, if the board decides that maybe there's an alternative route they want to take, what that could look like and the pros and cons of doing that. And my colleague Eric will also chime in as well. I think to give a little bit more color commentary around kind of the bill's movement, its timeline, and some of the political challenges that might be facing moving forward and how that affects what we might want to do. So I will just start with saying, I think both Christy and then Chair Hernandez each deserve a lot of credit for being very engaged in these conversations. There's a whole lot of stakeholders that are involved in the regional measure conversations, and each of them in our respective conversations with them throughout the process. They're clearly very well informed. So that's made our lives a heck of a lot easier in getting, the good information that you provide us and then coupling that with what we have. But in terms of an oppose unless amended position, first of all, as Christy mentioned, the legislative platform for LAVTA that is approved does explicitly state to oppose efforts to mandate consolidation. And then it also mentions oppose any development of consolidation plans that do not meaningfully involve and account for all potentially impacted stakeholders, including transit workers represented by collective bargaining units, for example. So right off the bat there, that was kind of an indication for Eric and myself to suggest that maybe there was room to do an oppose unless amended position, just right off the bat with that. Furthermore, when we're looking at a regional measure that is truly regional in its beneficiaries, right? One way to do that and to make sure that, this is something where we can have some semblance of say or some bit of voice that can, coupled with other voices, influence the outcome to make it something that's more equitable, especially to the smaller folks like LAVTA. Taking an oppose unless amended position does sort of position you in a place where your voice is a little bit louder. It's a little bit more heard, right? So from our perspective, that is one way to make it so that you are sort of more at the table and more a part of these conversations, as opposed to, staying back and not taking a position like that. With that being said, there are certainly some inherent, risks and potential negatives that come with taking an oppose unless amended position, right? First and foremost, I wouldn't call it backlash, but I would say, there may be opportunities where the authors of the legislation have certain frustrations with any entities or organizations that take that position, right? And in this case, it's a little, that's not a huge worry because as Christy mentioned, there are so many other organizations that are aligning with that position, so many other transit agencies and operators, labor, right? So a lot of these, big dogs that are in this fight would have that same position. So that would not expose us to the same sort of, I guess, liability, you could call it, from a political standpoint. But still, there is that, opportunity for us to get some backlash, right? But I think the biggest thing, from our perspective as your consultants, we're not just trying to influence the direction of policy. We're also trying to help build up LAVTA's name in Sacramento, right? Because ultimately, as we begin the process of working with you all as an agency, it's really our goal to make you one of those entities that is a thought leader and a thought partner with the legislature. And I think some of you have heard me use that term in our work together from a city standpoint, a city perspective. But being a thought partner is really important. And taking a formal position on a bill, especially a regional measure, and engaging in those conversations that way does, help build your voice, help build credibility, and potentially, help elevate you to that level where down the road with continual work, you become a thought partner. So those were our initial thoughts based on, everything that we put together, the political, landscape and the dynamics of the measure as to why we would want to do an opposed unless amended position potentially. I will also say, though, that we can still very much so engage in conversations, be at the table, and advocate for LAVTA's interests on this measure without taking that position. There's always the opportunity to kind of just continue to watch, not make any formal position and have conversations. And as the bill starts to develop, we can then decide at a later date, hey, it's time to engage. We can also do something so simple as a comment letter, right? Where we do not actually take a position, but we do have formal comments on the record. So, in a committee analysis, for example, or in a floor analysis, it would not show that LAVTA has a position of oppose or oppose unless amended or support or anything like that, but we can then give our feedback to them. And that's not uncommon for entities to do. Another avenue, which, my brilliant colleague Eric and I were discussing, is you could go down and do a support if amended position. And that way it's a little less abrasive from the author's perspectives. But you are in no way committing yourself to being supportive of the measure. You were just saying, if we get X, Y, and Z concessions, and the list can be pretty exhaustive, then that would be a situation in which, LAVTA would be supportive of the measure. So there are a number of ways you can approach this and pros and cons to all of them. But I'd love to just turn it over to my colleague Eric to give a little bit more color commentary around the process and the timeline of SB 1031 as it works through the legislature, and why we it makes sense to evaluate weighing in now versus what are the pros and cons of weighing in at a later date. So Eric, I'll pass it to you.
Certainly, and thank you, Andres. Can you all hear me okay?
You're a little muffled, but
I'm sorry. I'm trying a new camera because my last one didn't work well. So I don't know if this one's going to work any better. I hope it does. So yes, as Andres was discussing, primarily, where the bill is right now, there are a couple of moments in a bill's life in which it becomes really opportune to take a position. This is one of those. The bill has gotten through the committees, both of the Senate policy committees, and is awaiting hearing in a Senate Appropriations Committee. If it gets out of appropriations, it will go to the Senate floor. So that's going to happen in the next 3 weeks. If it gets out of the first house, this is one place where a bill has a real high threshold for passage because, passing off of the floor is a tricky thing. One thing that this bill has going for it is being a regionally focused measure. There will be members from LA and other parts of the state that won't have much opinion on the bill. However, to the extent that we can, if we have a position on the bill today, if we adopted a position like oppose unless amended position now, Andres and I can engage with some of those members that otherwise would probably not paying much attention to this bill, like from LA, from San Diego, from the Inland Empire, from other parts of the state, and talk to them about our concerns. It would be I wouldn't say unheard of. It's uncommon for representatives, advocates like ourselves, to go talk to those members without a position from you on your behalf, because they would say, "Well, LAVTA hasn't even taken a position on this bill. Why are you talking to me about this?" It would be strange for them. It doesn't happen very often. With a position, we could talk with them. At least get them to understand our perspective. If it doesn't change their perspective on the bill when it comes to the Senate floor, it may at least enable them to raise questions on the Senate floor, the questions that represent our concerns about this bill. Like, for example, if consolidation were to happen, this is a simple example, but this is a thing that I've talked to transit operators all over the state about and their concerns, of the precedent this bill sets. If consolidation happens and there is a consolidated authority making broad regional decisions on transit and the way transit ought to run across the 9-county region, what level of input do local board members, such as yourselves, have in what happens in the LAVTA specific service area? Because in the end, the people who control the money are going to have a lot to say about where that money is spent. That is concerning. That can be concerning for a board such as yourself. That can be concerning for, boards in the Inland Empire. If, those types of decisions were made at SCAG, at the larger MPO level in Southern California. And so, to some extent, we can talk to members about that issue, but without a position from you, it makes it a little bit harder for us to get in the door and for them to hear the message we're sharing. So that's why this is kind of a one very good potential moment to engage with a position on the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll start with opening it to public comment.
So we now have an attendee, and if you'd like to raise your hand to speak on this item, please do so now. They're not answering me, so and I didn't receive anything else via public comment.
Perfect. Then I will close public comment and turn it back to the board for any questions or comments.
Okay, I do. I'm not a fan of oppose unless amended. I think that if there is a reason that the bill is a problem, it should be a position of oppose, but sometimes it's not a real strong policy of the body, and then an oppose unless amended may actually have some value. But my understanding is that on this particular bill, this is kind of one of the most serious attacks or assaults on this agency that you've experienced. And is there something that would make this bill acceptable?
Thank you for that question. I think there are some things that would make this bill acceptable. And there were some comments made in the Senate Transportation Committee, some terms, if you will, that seemed very positive for this bill. But we haven't seen anything in writing yet. We have not seen any committee amendments. So first, the consolidation piece, that was discussed at our FNA meeting. I am a fan of learning. I am not afraid to learn that there may be some areas of functional consolidation that might be appropriate in the Bay Area. My concern is that that study happens whether or not there is any new money. And so that study currently doesn't have a funding source. That study requires recommendations be made to the state legislature. And with no new money and with recommendations being made, that could spell trouble for LAVTA. And the second big area is MTC taking control or attaching more rules to our existing Transportation Development Act money, which is 37% of your budget. It's a huge chunk of money for us. And the amended legislation, as I understand it, and I would look to my colleagues here to correct me, it does allow MTC to have additional control over TDA. So what I would suggest is, we're okay with new regional network management initiatives, but those should be conditioned on any new money that is being raised. So I think there are some areas that we think with some right amendments we could live with. But those two items are, I think, strong enough for me to recommend an oppose unless amended position.
Okay, so I have two other questions. Could you remind me, Andres, when this goes to appropriations, the ledge analysis that all the committee members see, when it's an oppose unless amended, does it show up as opposed?
So, well, it will depend on the committee. It will depend on the committee. So different committee consultants will do it a different way. There's not a uniform or a strict standard of saying, okay, if you have oppose unless amended, it shows up as oppose, or if you have oppose, or oppose unless amended, it states oppose unless amended. It really varies. And my colleague is someone who was a former chief consultant for a transportation committee in the assembly. So he knows that very well. So it really just depends. And for appropriations, for Senate appropriations, we could double check to see how they do it. And just, reviewing a couple of different committee analyses. So it depends.
I would appreciate that. I'd like to get that feedback. I have often been in Sacramento for hearings on bills and been surprised when I look at the binder of the legislative analysis and the oppose unless amended do not always show up as opposed. And I think that really weakens the position if the committee members, because I've heard the committee members say, well, I'm surprised, for example, Cal Cities isn't opposing this. Well, it's because it's an oppose unless amended. And so they take that into consideration, seeing it as not being opposed. So I would ask that we really know that it's going to be a position of oppose. And really, when you look at that, it makes a difference because there's a page and there's like two that say oppose and then this big list that are assumed as support. And I've heard legislators say, well, there's no real opposition here. So there was that, and I guess I'll stop with that.
Mayor Hernandez?
Yeah, so I just had a couple questions. I would want to know what, at least on the Alameda County side, what other what positions other bus agencies have taken, like AC Transit. As of right now, sorry, not AC Transit. Yeah, AC Transit. As of right now, ACTC is just putting this on a watch. And I'm listening to, what Eric is saying and so on. But I also feel is if you're going to oppose this, then at least specify why you're opposing it and then what you want out of it. So if you're asking for something, ask for it versus just them not understanding what is that you're wanting out of this. And then also the question is for Eric or for Andres is, when do you see this? Obviously, this is still kind of all in the making. So when will this actually go forward? And I'm thinking it's not going to go forward this year in 2024.
So I'll start and then I'll let Eric chime in as well. Chair Hernandez, first of all, really, really good and well taken point on a specific ask associated with the position. And I think from our perspective, that is how, if the board were to decide to take a formal position and not just watch, it would be, woven in would be a specific ask or specific request. Because as this is, aside from the consolidation portion, the big portion of this is the funding portion, right? Or potential funding portion. And along with that, while they have explicitly called out, the general purpose of this is for operations, which is, helpful for some, there is capital associated with it. So what folks are really doing and what stakeholders, not just, transit agencies, but quite frankly, labor organizations are doing is they are pushing for an increased focused and, you know, perhaps more dollars for capital costs associated with the proceeds of this regional measure. So to the chair, I just wanted to acknowledge your point. Very well taken. And if it were something that the board was to recommend an actual position on, you know, part of my and Eric's recommendation and work with the executive team would be to craft up an actual ask in there. To your other question in terms of the, you know, where this is in the process and do we foresee this moving now, later? It's difficult to say for sure, but what I will say is with the, you know, like I referred to them earlier, you know, some of the big dogs in the fight being having some serious concerns with the measure as is, there is the possibility that it doesn't move this year. That's a possibility. I certainly know from the author's perspective and the joint author's perspective and some folks in leadership that they do want to move it this year. So there is that sense of urgency from them. But you can also look at, you know, large labor groups. You can look at some, you know, just a multitude of transit agencies that have concerns that have not been resolved. And that could certainly, you know, slow things down because they have the attention of voting members. And quite frankly, you know, once a bill gets to its second house, once it's out of its house of origin, it's open to more scrutiny than it is in its house of origin sometimes. So the assembly may present a little bit more, present some more sticking points for the measure. So that could slow it down. And in reality, you know, this is something they want to place on the ballot in 2026. You know, it doesn't have to happen this year. The authorizing legislation does not have to happen this year. So that's just all to your point, Chair, that there's a chance that it doesn't move this year. But we don't know with certainty. Eric, I want to allow you to chime in as well and see if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, all good. You've hit the nail on the head on all of them. You know, so I mean, some of the opposition includes not just labor, but the Bay Area Council has come out in opposition. The transit agencies, there are not a lot of transit agencies that have come out in opposition out of the Alameda or Contra Costa counties yet, Chair Hernandez. So, you know, we would be out in front of some of them for sure. I know that there are lots of concerns, and as you mentioned, ACTC, you know, they put it on watch, but I know that they have some concerns. You know, there are other county transportation agencies that have come out in opposition: Sonoma, Santa Clara, San Mateo. So, you know, it's a really divided conversation. And the funny thing is, you know, there various parties that have come out in opposition are opposed to various parts of this bill. It is a very broad measure that does a lot of different things. And so you're absolutely right that if we took a position, we have to be very specific and very succinct in the issues that we have and the proposals that we would, you know, make to resolve those concerns. I think that there are a lot of parts of this measure that we would frankly be supportive of. Who doesn't argue that we need more revenue for transit in the Bay Area? That is, you know, I think that's definitely a true statement. What strings come with that revenue is the concern, ultimately, right? And who gets to decide how that revenue is just expended? Those are you know, legitimate concerns. And whether this gets, I think I'm with Andres. I think it's you know, I would give them odds that it doesn't happen this year, given just the complex nature of the bill. However, there is, you know, that you can't ever count out the Senator, you know, Senator Wiener and Senator McGuire being pro tem. You know, that they can spend a lot of political capital and make this happen if they want. I'm just not sure that you know, there isn't a dire need to get it done this year, and so I would be surprised if they spend that capital now.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard, or sorry, Mayor Hernandez, did you have?
Oh, no, I was going to say, so what did AC Transit decide on?
They're taking a watch position right now.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard?
So I'm not opposed to taking an outright opposed position and communicate that we may be willing to come off of that. If some language changes that we can communicate to them are listened to. But I just ask, is there a downside to doing that? And so, is there, because I do think what Commissioner Testa said, that it's a stronger statement than just an oppose unless amended. And so, but I wonder though, if there's any downside to doing that. So Andreas or Eric, if there's a downside to doing that, let me know so that we don't hurt ourselves. But otherwise, I could support just an outright oppose.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor, for the question. Quite frankly, in my experience, and I think Eric's experience as well, especially with certain authors, if you present a straight opposed position, you cut yourself out of conversations. My train of thought is, unless there's absolutely no way to make anything come out of a bill that's good or something that's beneficial, there are some instances where it warrants a straight oppose. But if there's ways where there is an entrance into being part of the conversation, and whether it's on your own or with a group of like-minded stakeholders, amending the bill in such a way where it ends up having a net positive benefit, we should stay away from a straight opposed position, simply because it cuts you out of the conversation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Or something that
as the old
could
saying
cut
goes.
you out of it.
As the old saying goes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
First, a question. Thank you very much for all of the detailed information. The question is on the fund. I know we're very concerned about the funding source for the consolidation study, and the fact that the consolidation study, as the bill is currently written, goes forward whether the funding is identified or not, and that the bill currently identifies a fund into which to put the unidentified source of funding. And, you can argue about bias and such. Is our concern that they have not identified a funding source on paper because they know where their funding source is coming from, and we are concerned about the bias in that funding source? Not to put too fine a head on it, I'm not asking you to identify that funding source. I'm asking, is that one of our concerns?
That is not one of my concerns. I think we don't, my concern more is that this study is happening regardless of whether there is new money raised in a regional measure. And the study requires recommendations to be made to the state legislature. Senator Wahab did soften some of the language. She has moved from just consolidation to consolidation and coordination. But honestly speaking, my biggest concern was not, where is the money coming from? It is, this study happens regardless of whether there is any new money.
So maybe I missed the point entirely, but so there's two things that this bill does. One is it puts a measure on the ballot that may or may not pass for additional revenue. And it also mandates a consolidation study.
Yeah.
And again, there's no money for the study identified, but there's also, the study happens whether the measure for new revenue passes or doesn't pass.
Correct.
Do I have that right?
You have, unless I'm wrong, I've got Andres shaking his head.
No,
You are not.
If I may, you're absolutely correct, Christy, and council member, yes, you're both correct. It happens with or without the funding measure that would go to the voters that may or may not be approved. And then as it relates to funding for the study itself, and this is where I love Eric's expertise, I believe that that's not really a concern for anyone, because it would direct California State Transportation Agency to do the study. That would just be built into the budget that they request as a state agency to the administration and Department of Finance at the beginning of the year. It'd be probably minimal costs, nothing that's going to scare anyone.
But they are also accepting private donations to help fund that study, correct? I
believe in the amended bill that is still in there, yes.
Yes. That's still in the amended bill, and that doesn't trouble anybody? It troubles me a little bit. I don't know if that troubles anybody else. Okay, that was my question. I have comments as well, if you want them. I would not advise us to take a straight oppose, but I am definitely in favor of an oppose unless amended and with very specific amendments as to what we would be in favor of.
Second that motion.
Just a little bit of feedback, but yes, great points. When we talked about this before, when you regionalize transit, do you regionalize labor and labor rates? So just as a point, that was discussed by this committee. I'll leave it up to you guys to do a discussion offline. That's a concern. And I've seen Senator Weiner take a very favorable point of view for funding, more additional funding for BART. So I just want to make sure that the funding is fair and allocated if it moves forward. That there's not some huge bailout for one transit agency, leaving the others on the skinny side of the funding. Because what they're really gonna want us to do, I would think, is advocate in our region for this bill to move forward. How can we advocate unless we're assured that we have funding that's going to come, a significant funding that's gonna come to us? And that will be the job of the senators to allocate some sort of a fair balance of funding that would come to us, and that we wouldn't be on the loser side of funding. So a large amount of funding, let's say, goes to another transit agency and we end up on the skinny side of funding. So I would have a problem with that. And I appreciate the extra addition. AC Transit, has AC Transit, not ACTC, but AC Transit taken a stance on this?
No, they've
They're
taken a
a watch.
watch position. They took a watch position on the 24th, and I just met with the AC Transit General Manager today for a totally different reason, and he confirmed. And he had a spirited discussion at his board.
So ACTC and AC
Yes.
Transit both did a watch.
Yes, correct.
Which is an extra state, like move, but I'm going to, it makes sense to me as oppose unless amended. And then really make sure that if we're going to campaign and support a bill like this, that we get our fair share. That's my point.
Eric, did you have a response to that?
Yes, I'm sorry, just real quickly. You raised a really good point about the current language in the bill for the regional measure money. It has this, section, a requirement to return to source 70% of the funds to each individual county. But, to your point, AC Transit is, also in Alameda County to some degree. And if consolidation or coordination, if someone else was making a decision about how that money should be spent in Alameda County, they may determine that, there's all sorts of ways to look at how to most efficiently use transit dollars. And they may say, well, you can more efficiently use this money with AC Transit and leave, as you put it, LAVTA on the skinny side of the funding. This is precisely the concern. I think that we're suggesting is reason enough for us to really get involved. AC Transit can take us a watch position because, well, they're probably going to come out on the good side of all this, right? We're the ones that could have our lunches eaten. It would be less likely that it'll go the other way around. And so, that's I think, as I'm sorry, the executive director has pointed out, this is, if we don't get in this conversation, we may be sorry that we hadn't.
But if I could follow on, Eric, we have multiple BART stops in Alameda County. So if it goes to BART, it's still going to BART in Alameda County, but it's not drilling down to buses and shuttles and things like that. And so I would, we hear that over and over. If you want me to support something, be really detailed about where the money's gonna go, because a few of us have been misled. Oh, trust me, and then the funding isn't there. Okay, thank you.
And if I may, very briefly, Mayor Brown, because I see the chair has something. But that is why part of the goal and the strategy is to advocate for a very specific funding plan with specific items called out, and not just leaving it writ large, return to source language, which on its face, sounds great, 70% return to source. Senator Wahab, I had a meeting with her 2 weeks ago and she was telling me, she's like, well, we're actually trying to bump that up to 80. And I'm like, that's all good and dandy. What does that even mean though? Right? Like who's getting what? So that's just to reinforce the point that we are astutely aware of the, just because it says return to source and Alameda County might get X, that doesn't mean you're going to get X. So just want to note, we understand that. Yeah.
So the only thing I wanted to add was, one, have we spoken to Senator Wahab, Senator Glazer, Senator Weiner? Have you spoken to Andy at MTC? I mean, those are key players. Why are we not doing that?
We've had a meeting with Senator Glazer with the East Bay Coalition. We are working on setting up a meeting with Lori Wilson, Assemblymember Lori Wilson, who chairs the Assembly Transportation Committee. I have not personally been invited to meetings with Senator Wahab or Weiner, but we have an East Bay, we share the load in the Bay Area. We have East Bay small operator reps who attend larger meetings on behalf of the small operators. They have met with Glazer, they have met with Wahab. So we can continue to schedule meetings. I think some of those meetings were more fruitful than others. The Glazer meeting was very quick. We just had that about 2 weeks ago. But we are doing our best to get meetings.
So we
scheduled.
haven't reached out to MTC. MTC's it would be the holder.
Yeah, we can, I have not reached out to Mr. Premier specifically, but would be happy to do so. And Rebecca Long on his staff.
Okay. So my take, a couple of things. So one, I do think the bill has moved dramatically in the direction we want it to move. It hasn't gone far enough. So I do think that oppose with amendment, oppose unless amended is the right path. I think it's important, when this conversation is done, if we say it's oppose unless amended, that it comes back as the bill gets more final and we either move to full oppose or support, possibly support with amendments if there's tweaks we're looking for, but that we don't leave it as oppose unless amended. I think that is, I do agree with Council Member Testa's point that it's a weaker stance as we get further along. But I agree with both Eric and Andres that currently we can make an ask and we should be making that ask. And so my question is, or I can try to summarize, but you've been taking a lot more notes than I have. What I would be comfortable with is a motion for oppose with amendment and specifying what we are looking for to change. So at this point, can you summarize, or can Eric or Andres summarize what amendments would get us to support?
I think we would need to condition consolidation study on any new revenue measure passing, or take consolidation out of the bill 100%. That would be my wish, would be take it out 100%. Maybe more middle of the road is just condition that study based on the new measure passing. We would want TDA to be taken off the table for any new control. So we would recommend that MTC's new rules regarding regional network management apply to any new funding that is generated. And I think we would want to be better understand, and I'll have to think of the words, but the return to source, the money coming to LAVTA, it is unclear how much we would get in the framework that's in the amended bill. And so I could work with Eric and Andres to come up with some language, and happy to run it by Chair Hernandez before it goes out. Your legislative program does give me the authority to convene with the chair. If something happens that's urgent in between meetings, I can work with the chair to change a position or create a position. So are you comfortable with that?
I think so. So that answers my questions. And so I would support a motion. I would prefer an oppose if amended with the notes that we had, and then the comments that it comes back and we ultimately amend our stance as it's being fully baked.
I'll make a motion that we take an oppose unless amended position with the amendments we just talked to, And the motion includes that our executive director please reach out directly to the authors of the bill to express our recommendations directly and have a conversation directly with the authors of the bill.
Do we have a second?
I would like to bring a new motion into play.
Let's see if we have a second first.
See if we have a second and then
I know I can hear you.
I'll second for the discussion, sure.
second, and then, Mayor Hernandez, did you want to modify the motion or replace it?
Well, I just wanted to replace the fact that I feel that we should actually have more conversations with Townsend to be able to put in writing instead of just creating something on the fly of exactly what we're asking for. And then talk to the appropriate leaders and then bring it back.
I'm happy to accept that modification, that the conversations come back to us.
Prior to sending a letter about.
Well, we don't have another meeting for another month.
Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't time to do
Yeah.
that. Appropriations, they said was
The
maybe.
May 13th.
But I would feel much more comfortable hearing in writing what those amendments are. And so having that maybe sent to us all with the executive director and chair to make that decision after that's all been identified.
Well, it can't be sent to us all, that's,
Yeah, then you.
we can't weigh in on it.
But can I do
It
one?
can be Sent to it.
I think you got a lot of feedback from us, didn't you?
Yeah.
To incorporate?
I think if,
You could send it out, couldn't you? We just can't respond.
Yeah.
Right.
We could respond, we could always have a special meeting as well.
I think just sending the information
Okay.
without us responding.
Using all the feedback that you heard today, it's a recorded meeting, you can listen to it.
Yeah.
So-
So I think the substitution motion, if we're going to accept a friendly amendment, is that we will take a oppose unless amended position. With Christie and Mayor Hernandez meeting with Townsend to discuss what the amendments are. We will then get the feedback sent to us, not for discussion, but for information purposes. And that Christie will then reach out to the relative or the relevant legislators. Is that,
So
did that summarize, Mayor Hernandez, what we were asking
no,
for?
so mine was to bring it back to the next meeting and not oppose it right now until we get all the information. And then there can be a motion made at that time.
I'm not going to accept that amendment. I think my motion then will stand as is, because I don't think we have that kind of time.
Okay, then we have a substitute motion from Mayor Hernandez to table this until next month with consultation with Townsend. Do we have a second to the substitute motion? Hearing no second, the substitute motion dies. Was my summary then?
So the original motion then is what's on the table, which was with the take an oppose unless amended, with the recommendations that we talked about, the amendments that we talked about, which will be fleshed out and put into writing, will be communicated directly to the authors of the bill and a formal position.
Working with
and-
Townsend.
Yes, of course.
Yes, working with them.
Of course, working with them.
And Mayor Brown, you,
I was
what you
second,
seconded,
and
that
I'm
sounds
fine with
correct.
that second.
All right,
Okay, but we're gonna be, you'll notify us of what those are.
we need to get the letter out in the next day or two, so absolutely.
Well,
Okay.
that you gotta, she's saying you need to meet with the two senators, so. good
I'm
luck
saying
with that.
communicate directly.
Yes, yes, I will work with Townsend to communicate with them before any letter gets sent out.
Thank you.
And to continue working with them directly, not just with the Senate writ large.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, welcome.
So, Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Aye.
Chair Hernandez,
No,
Director Josie,
I,
Director Kick is absent, Director Testa.
I would have supported the alternative motion, except there really wasn't time for it to then get to the committee, so aye.
And then Vice Chair Bryan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, motion passed, sorry. We're moving on to item 7, 2024 Youth Ride Free Summer.
This discussion should be quicker than the last few. We are asking that the board hear the item today and provide feedback on.
Can we release them for the stuff?
Oh, yeah, we can release Eric and Andreas. Thank you so much for staying. I'll circle up with you after this meeting.
Appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to hear all about it.
Thank you for.
So I'll be brief given the time, but this was presented to the Projects and Services Committee about 2 weeks ago. In summary, this is a pilot that I am proposing. We activate this summer whereby we allow all youth to ride free regardless of whether they have access to the Alameda County Student Pass. During the committee meeting, we discussed the fiscal impact of this program and whether there would be a return on investment for running for free. We received about $15,000 from Alameda CTC for student rides taken in the summer. I've been speaking with Alameda CTC staff and they haven't said yes, but they are open to funding us at the same level as last year, provided that we can get them some data, and so that won't be a problem. Also, marketing came up, and so we included in your staff report a very high-level promotional brief detailing how we will market this promotion. We would be looking at some KKIQ advertising and our press release and our phone on holds messaging. Also, a TikTok ad campaign.
So we know those work.
We do know those work. And some Facebook, Instagram, marketing, and obviously updating our website page. So some of this would be done by our agency. Some of this would be done by the advertising company. We are estimating about $15,000 that we would spend on this promotion, and that is included in your fiscal 24 budget. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll start by opening up public comment. We have a commentary in the room.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julie Hopkins. I work for Livermore Area Recreation and Park District. I am currently the coordinator over at MSC's Municipal Elementary. And I am hoping that this is a possibility, excuse me, that this will happen. I want to thank everybody for the bus service that we have, bus 18. I mean, we've been quite a few years without bus service, so just having that. This is kind of the hopeful cherry on the top that the kids are looking forward to summer planning and going to different places within Livermore area, as well as Dublin and Pleasanton. So I'm hoping, getting my word of mouth to our youth and the schools and all the rest of our ESS programs, extended student services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additional public comments?
So there's no attendees in this meeting. I didn't get anything from the public email.
All right, I'll close public comment. And turn it over to Supervisor Albert.
I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate the public comment. I have a huge soft spot in my heart for teachers. I heard this is a teacher, right? Did I hear that right? A Livermore teacher coming all the way here to advocate for this program. Thank you for all you do. I really appreciate that. So I'm in support of this program.
I have some clarifying questions when it's done.
I'll start with.
Okay, thank you. So youth ride free is very vague. So first of all, I'll say, are we giving 5-year-olds solo rides? What's a youth? I mean, it says 18 or younger, and 18 is not a minor at least, but just want to clarify.
So this came up before. We talked about, is there a floor for when kids can ride on their own? We don't have a hard and fast rule here at LAVTA. Typically 5 and under ride for free with a parent. We do have some parents that send their youngsters out on the bus.
Okay.
But in general, I think we're trying to target 6th graders coming into middle school and middle schoolers going into high school. And really hyper targeting areas where we have new bus service. So I was inspired at the St. Patrick's Day Festival, talking to families and talking about the Route 4 in particular, and people getting excited, oh, my daughter doesn't have to stay at home during the summer. And so it just got me thinking, maybe, since not everyone gets that free pass over the summer, that this might just be some low-hanging fruit to spread the word about our new services and to see if we actually can generate ridership.
Just be clear, it sounds like a great program. I'm just trying to understand, because when we do school trippers, it's middle school, high school.
Mhm.
We don't school trip elementary.
No. And we wouldn't be targeting elementary, although, I know Ms. Hopkins, she works with elementary students and with a chaperone, that's not a problem.
Oh, chaperones are great.
Yeah.
You can have 4 kids over there. Okay, so there's no hard and fast guidelines for solo riders.
Unless,
Okay, and then you said 18 and younger, and 18 is a majority or an adult, so, is that because they're high school age?
we aren't going to be checking IDs. I think if they look to be a youth, we
You're
will
not
let
giving me a ride on a youth?
yes, ma'am, we will, absolutely.
No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
ma'am.
I'm just
We'll give
kidding.
you 2 rides.
I'm on my way to the senior
Yeah,
center.
no, and we expect there to be some, maybe some older students riding, taking advantage, but I firmly believe that that'll be in the noise, and that, yeah.
And last question, Lost City College.
They already ride for free with their student
Right,
pass.
so they're gonna do that through the summer,
Yes.
just to be very clear.
Yes,
Okay.
we collect all of those fees year round.
Okay, so that will still continue.
Correct.
Independent of this.
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank
I had a
you.
quick question. You mentioned solo rides, but this isn't just for unaccompanied minors. This is all children. So grandma takes the kids to the pool, whatever. Mom takes the kids, dad takes the kids, everybody, kids ride free, even when they're accompanied, and when they're not accompanied. So, yeah.
Well, maybe they can go get a job down at the mall.
Well,
Hey.
sure. And they can ride the bus there and then they can continue to do that during the school year.
Oh, love it.
We will launch this starting what date? Remind me?
June 1st or so. We're gonna look at, when schools are out. We also run our free transit to schools
Mhm.
promotions. So really, we'll be running free for the summer and then the first
Basically,
week
June
of
first and through second week of
September. Yeah,
September-ish.
yeah.
So given that it will launch directly after school gets out, let's take advantage of free advertising
Yes,
and
yes,
make
yes,
sure we
yes.
get flyers to the schools, but maybe we don't send the flyers to the elementary schools if that's not what our target audience is.
Yeah.
Or maybe we do because we want to take advantage of the accompanied
grade.
trips or the accompanied trips too, to get parents and caregivers and nannies and grandparents and, take the bus to your summer activities, take the bus to drop the kids off at the summer camp. Take the
Mhm.
babysitter who can't drive yet, get on
Mhm.
the bus with the kiddos to take them to the pool and the rec center and all of that. So I'll leave that up to staff to decide whether that's appropriate or not, but let's jump on it while we still have 3 weeks or 4 weeks left of school and send out those parent square free advertising, because families read it when it comes from their school site and not so much when it's on KKIQ and their
Yeah.
jumping channels.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I believe Dublin and Livermore will be out May 31st.
Okay.
And then, or sorry, Dublin and Pleasanton are out May 31st, Livermore is out, June 6th.
So if we need it June
Ish.
1st, then it
So
can
June
cover
1st.
everybody. Yeah, and that's a nice little number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So June 1st would be a good target. I completely agree on hitting Parent Square, and I would say for Parent Square, it's fine, you send it, since that is read by parents and Peach Jar and all
That would
that.
be sure, okay.
There's a different one for each
Okay.
district. I would target all grade levels because parents are gonna be the ones reading it and they'll, be the ones deciding if it's appropriate for their child or not. And, accompanying them and all that. So I think this sounds great.
I do have a question
Yeah.
based on what you just said. So, what did you decide? That it would start June 1st?
I think June 1st is the consensus that would
Okay,
be.
but some of the schools don't get out until late June.
It's
So,
1 week, yeah.
I'm sorry.
1 week late, 1 week into June.
Okay, so everybody gets free ride the last week of school.
Correct, yeah, and most Livermore kids already have the free
Well,
passes, so
Livermore.
yeah, so.
So now Pleasanton will all have
Yep.
free rides last week of school. Okay,
Well, sounds like.
Pleasanton and Dublin will be out of school.
May
Livermore will.
oh, I thought
still
you were
be in
saying
school.
that they didn't get out.
Other way around.
Sorry, if
So-
I misspoke, Livermore is.
Different.
I got to get out.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's where it was for us forever. Okay,
we need to take an action with.
I believe.
Just gives it the feedback.
Requested board here, the item
Okay,
provides.
okay.
So you don't need a motion on that? You're spending $15,000.
That's within my authority.
It sure is, but wouldn't it be nice to have a board?
We can have-
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation for, agenda item seven, and provide, youth ride free summer program, starting June 1st until August 30th.
Yeah.
Second.
Until school starts. Yeah, okay, David.
All right, any further comments? Roll call.
And we didn't have anybody in the public getting, except for one person here today. Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Aye.
Chair Hernandez,
Aye.
Director Josie.
Aye.
Director Kick is absent, Director Testa,
Aye.
Vice Chair Branning,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right, moving on to the executive director's report.
All right, I will go fast. Big news is your ridership is going up. I'm not gonna give you data yet, but, I watch the data every day. And so, particularly weekends look strong. Your Route 4 is carrying passengers, your Route 18 is carrying passengers. Pardon, not as many, but everything is, we don't have any routes that are not carrying people, so very happy there.
No empty buses.
No, and so you'll get your first full month of data at the next meeting. We are gearing up for summer bus service, summer school bus service. So in your packet, we detail the service we will be supplying to Dublin Unified and to Livermore. Basically, Livermore, we're running one extra trip on the 18. And in Dublin, we are running the 501, 502, and 504. For Pleasanton, you have summer school at Amador Valley, and that's well served by your Route 10. So we don't receive requests from Pleasanton. We'll be participating in a few community events, Bike to Wherever Day, that's May 16th. So stop by. We're trying to crash the Gillig Energizer Station, which is right down the street. So be out there with some goodies from Wheels. We'll be at the Livermore Downtown Street Fest, May 18th and 19th. We are a sponsor and we will be offering free rides on Route 10 and Route 30, so folks can get to and from the festival safely. We went to Portland for the LAVTA International Bus Rodeo. So that was really exciting. I first just want to show off this awesome article that we had published in the LAVTA publication. So I'll just pass that around. So this is all highlighting our new service. That was really great. And a big thank you to David Mark for making that article happen. I got to
the Bay Area, Snowcap Mountain.
That's us, yeah.
Sorry.
Evelyn Carrera competed. She was the first female competitor. She competed at 7:45 in the morning in the rain in Portland. She did not win, but she did a great job. She came in right in the middle of the pack. She was super excited. It was really great energy. I had a blast being there. So, and also just to report in operations, our safety and training manager completed the FTA's Transportation Safety Institute training. So that's great. We wanted to report to you that she accomplished that. Moving on to finance and admin, I attended the LAVTA Legislative Conference with Chair Hernandez, as well as with the two of our other East Bay small operator general managers and their respective board chairs. You've got a picture in there with Congressman Swalwell. We had a great visit with him and Congressman DeSaulnier. We also met with leadership from the Federal Transit Administration and National Transit Database. Last week, we submitted a request for $78 million for the Atlantis facility. So this was a huge grant request. I'm very proud. Jennifer Heyman's here, stitched it together for us. So I just want to give mad kudos to her. I think we're gonna win. We're just gonna manifest that. We're gonna manifest that, all the energy. But it's a significant ask with a significant workforce development plan. So we were able to work with Las Positas, with Gillig, and with the California Transit Training Consortium on a workforce development plan. So very excited about that. In your packet, you also have an update on our IT cloud transformation project. I won't go into details, but if you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them. And looking ahead, we will be attending the California Transit Association Legislative Conference, which will be May 20th and 21st. Your stats in your packet for fixed route, I just have to give you a preview for Go Tri Valley, is down 28%.
Turn off the TikTok.
I was waiting to see if the cap was working. We've heard no complaints, I verified that.
Good.
And so we still have some work to do, but I think we're all very pleased that we saw a month decrease of almost 30% right after the cap went in.
Kind of shocking that our super users were 30%.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I think it's also, what I hope is that people are using the bus. We got a wonderful compliment from a Dublin resident on Route 4 who said she used to have to walk a mile to the bus to West Dublin BART, and now she can take Route 4.
Nice.
And so that, I'm hoping that some folks who use Go Tri Valley now take the bus. And lastly, I know I've been packing your agendas. I'm so sorry. I'll be working on that. But in your finance and admin committee, you've got a couple agenda items for May. I'm actually gonna cancel project and services for May. We don't have any pressing agenda items, so I think that'll be a nice change. And then, yeah, in June, we pick it right back up again. So I can answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions?
There's one little, to consider.
Yes.
When you have contractors that you're paying probably hourly, I don't know, I would say put them early in the agenda because they probably really enjoy hearing about the budget, but it's nice to release them. We try to do that at least because there's, they're expensive. So that's my only comment.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the updates and I'm glad you went to DC and advocated for Wheels LAVTA.
And Congressman Swalwell said he's going to try to help us get a meeting with Secretary Buttigieg about our project. So we are following up on that. I will.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then moving on to item 9, matters initiated by the Board of Directors. Any matters initiated? All right, seeing none, our next meeting date is scheduled for June 3rd, 2024, and we are adjourned.
Great. Thanks, you got the schedule.